Hey everyone, Chang here and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to go over the 4 most common mistakes for many algebra students when they're first learning these different topics. Once you guys get these 4 mistakes, know what are the pitfalls and how to avoid them. I can guarantee you your algebra game is going to be increased by at least 5 or 6 levels. So let's talk about these mistakes. For the first common mistake is in relation to square root, right? Here I have square root with variables in it. Oftentimes it could be with variables, some form of expression, or it could just be numbers as well. Now, the common mistake that I see a lot of students do is, for example, if you have the square root of x plus y, they would simplify it as square root of x plus square root of y. That is not correct. Remember, if there is some form of addition or subtraction in between the two expressions, right, either variables or numbers, you cannot break it down into separate square roots, right? Same thing with this one. A common mistake is to think that, well, since this is a square root of x squared and a y squared, I can rewrite this as x minus y. The mistake is to assume that you can break it down and then start canceling out the exponent. Once again, that's a no-go. So don't do that, right? But if we rewrite this, we can actually separate them into square roots. So how does that work? Square root of x squared minus y squared can be written as square root of x plus y times square root or times x minus y with this inside the square root. Then you can break it down into square root of x plus y times square root of x minus y, right? So there, you can actually separate the square root. Now, why is that the case? Even though there's addition and subtraction here, notice that what we're separating is actually 2 expressions that are multiplying each other. So if they're multiplying or dividing, you can separate them. If they're adding and subtracting, you cannot. Be very careful of that. Now for this next one, the common mistake is actually in relation to distributing a negative sign. When it's positive, mistakes are very minimal. Negative is the one that gets people. Now, what happens is that the common mistake is that when you see a negative sign outside the parentheses, they always remember the first one, right? Negative 3x to the 4th. And then afterwards, they forget. They put negative 4x squared plus 3x, right? That's not correct because guess what? That means that this negative sign ended up only in the front. It didn't actually distribute anywhere. So that's the common mistake. What can we do? Make sure, as a previous math teacher of mine said, you have to be fair to everyone. When you distribute, you have to give it to every single person, right? Or every single expression, I guess you could say. So when you distribute the negative sign, it's actually supposed to be negative 3x to the 4th, and then this one goes again to the next. That's going to be negative. Negative is positive, so it's going to be plus 4x squared, and then this one goes again to this one right here. That's a positive and a negative, so total negative, right? It's gonna be minus 3x. And so therefore, this is the appropriate answer. Make sure that the negative sign is distributed to every single expression, number, and variable in there. This next mistake is actually one, embarrassingly, I made tremendously, a lot throughout my years of learning algebra, until finally a teacher sat me down and told me that what I've been doing is incorrect. So when you're asked to simplify an expression, what you're going to do is you're going to try to find out what's on top and what's on bottom, and then you cancel, right? So I've seen numerous variations of what could possibly come out of an expression like this, right? The first one is they cancel this guy and this guy. There's x's. So they would have a basically a simplified expression that looks something like that. Okay? That's not correct, right? The other one that's common is that rather than canceling this guy, they're going to cancel this guy as well. So in that case, the expression would be 2x squared plus x, and of course, you know, top and bottom, they cancel, right? Those are possible combinations, and I'm sure there are other variations of doing this expression incorrect or injustice, right? So here's the thing. Remember that when you are trying to simplify an expression, whether it's to solve a problem or just to simplify, right? Make sure that when you're canceling, everything else that is being separated, it's all multiplication or division. So what do I mean by that? So for example here, if we really want to simplify, we can. But we have to make sure that it's all multiplication. Right now we have an addition. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor out an x, right? Because these two expressions share an x. So we have an x right here, and then now we have 2x squared plus 1 over x. Now, these are all multiplication. While inside the parentheses itself, there is a plus sign. When you're looking at the entire expression itself, they're all multiplication. And since this is a multiplication, right, and then you have the x at the bottom, now you can finally simplify. Well, top and bottom, same thing, gone, gone, right? And so, right here, we have 2x squared plus 1. Okay, now the other common mistakes in relation to simplification is the idea that when you cancel something, because we use the word cancel, right, we think that it immediately goes to 0. So I've seen situations where you end up with something like x over x, right? And then when you cancel x over x, immediately, all right, well, if this goes away, we cancel it, and we cancel it, it should be 0. That's not the case. And I know there's a push now that if you have something like this, instead of saying cancel, they make it, I think it's called a big 1. And then they draw a terrible looking 1. But they do something like that. So to ensure that you guys know, even though you cancel, it becomes 1. Just remember that when you're canceling, right, you're technically dividing top and bottom by the same number. And when you're dividing, remember, 6 divided by 6 or 5 divided by 5, any number, any expression divided by itself is 1, not 0. Now, this last mistake is, I don't want to say controversial, but it heavily depends on the goal of the lesson, right? When you take the square root of a number, remember that basically you're trying to find a number that multiplies by itself and gets the number inside that square root. So, commonly, we immediately jump to the positive variation. Square root of 16, of course we know what that is. That is 4, right? Square root of 25, of course we know what that is. That is 5, right? Now here's the thing though. Keep in mind that there is positive and negative variation. So just to be safe, and of course you have to pay attention to the problem itself and what it's asking, but just to be safe, always remember that when you take the square root, especially of a number, there's always the possibility of the positive and negative variation. So the more complete answer is usually the plus and minus. Plus and minus, right? Because guess what? Negative 4 times negative 4, the negative cancels each other out and still becomes 16. Of course, 4 times 4 is 16. Same with 25 in this case, right? Negative 5 times negative 5, negative sign cancels out, becomes 25. And of course the positive variation. So just to be safe, whenever you encounter a square root of a number, give it the positive and negative variation unless the problem itself specifies not to. All right, so there you have it. That's 4 common mistakes that we usually encounter when either teaching or studying algebra. Now here's the thing though, don't be embarrassed by these mistakes because guess what? It's called common for a reason. A lot of people make these mistakes. Now that you know about it though, be hyper vigilant. Notice in situations where you could potentially make this mistake, just slow down, work through the problem, ask yourself, are you possibly doing one of these 4? If not, that's great. If you are, now you can correct it. And I can guarantee you, once you get these guys down pat, your algebra game will be through the roof. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.